Hey everybody, welcome to the latest installment of our Tuesday Community Chats. I'm Eli Beckman, I'm the mayor. We've also got our assistant town manager and town clerk, Rebecca Vaughn. We've got fire chief Ruben Martin. We've got public works director, RJ Suko. We've got Mike Moriarty, our code enforcement officer. And we've got our parks and rec director, Ashley Howe, on the line here to answer any questions. I think we also have our planning and building director, Adam Wolf, who might be joining us in a minute here. Anyway, you guys know the drill. We're just here to give some quick updates and answer any questions that anyone may have. The only real two things that I want to talk about, both good news, which is excellent. The first is that we have appointed a new member of our town council. I think a lot of you are probably already aware. Vice Mayor David Kuhnhart has resigned. He's moving to Maine, which is exciting for him and exciting for us as we've appointed Leela Mongan to fill his seat. And so Leela is going to be your newest member of the town council. She's going to be sworn in at our next council meeting. That'll be Tuesday, April 6th at 6:30 p.m. So we're really excited to serve with her. We had a fantastic application and interview process, ended up getting applications from, I think, 11 different residents, and we interviewed 9 of them. 2 dropped out, and I think we were all just kind of blown away by the talent of the field out there. Every resident who applied, just I think really was sharp and prepared and came, I think, ready to serve the community to the utmost, which was fantastic. We were thrilled to pick Leela, even though it was a really hard decision. And so we're hoping, in addition to obviously swearing her in at our next council meeting, we're hoping that we'll be able to maybe at our next community chat. So, probably the second Tuesday in April, we'll bring Leela on here and do kind of a little getting to know you session. So I think that'll be a really fun chance for members of the community to have some FaceTime with Leela. And then the other thing I wanted to mention, which is very exciting, is that effective tomorrow, Marin is graduating from the red tier to the orange tier, which means even less restrictions on us. So I think we're all probably pretty thrilled that it feels like, we're starting to gain some momentum and things are really moving in the right direction. Obviously, we want to really, keep going on those gains and not let up on our momentum. We want to keep wearing those masks, keep social distancing. Enjoy the things that we're now allowed to enjoy, like indoor dining up to, I think, 50% capacity. What is it? I think gyms are open indoor 25% capacity. We've got a webpage up on the town's website with the full kind of list of what the new restrictions are, but it's just another step towards normal life, which I think everybody's really excited about. So that's, I think, all I've got to offer right now. And do we have any other updates from our staff on the line here?
Oh, I can just add, along with some of those, I haven't had the opportunity to really absorb a lot of the guidelines since the county did just issue their press release this afternoon. But one of the things I noticed was it did say gyms and fitness studios can expand indoor capacity to 25% and reopen indoor pools, which was one of the questions we were asked, I think, on a previous chat, was when can indoor pools open?
Yes.
And that is our answer. Let's see, indoor dining up to 50%, museums and movie theaters can expand indoor capacity to 50% or 200 people, whichever is fewer. Houses of worship can expand indoor capacity to 50% or 200 people, whichever is fewer. The same for weddings and funerals. Family recreation and entertainment facilities can expand indoor capacity to 25%. Breweries and wineries that do not serve food can expand indoor capacity to 25% or 100 people, whichever is fewer. Bars that do not serve food can operate outdoors only. Non-essential offices may reopen, but working remotely is still encouraged. And higher education can expand indoor capacity to 50% for indoor lectures. And I think that some of you may have heard Dr. Willis talk about small private gatherings, but small private gatherings, they have guidelines out for that, where you can hold these small private gatherings with masks and physical distancing required. No more than 3 separate households can attend, including the host. Gatherings should be 2 hours or less. Those with symptoms must not attend. Those at high risk of severe illness, strongly encouraged not to attend. And singing, shouting, chanting, cheering, or exercising is strongly discouraged in those small group gatherings. Oh, and drive-in movies were now permitted, I think, back in the red tier. So I know that a lot of people have been making use of the drive-in movie theater over on the Bayside, and that should be especially enjoyable now that the weather is getting warmer.
Has that opened back up for the spring yet? Well, that's great. Excellent.
Yes, I think ironically last week's movie was Frozen, and I've heard of a couple people going, and they were actually very cold. Again, weather is improving.
Fitting. Excellent. Thank you, Rebecca. Anybody else want to give any staff updates? Yeah, RJ.
Yeah, a couple quick updates. One, we received notification that we were successful in getting a Cal OES grant. So it's for up to $300,000 to do backup power at the community center. Could involve battery backups with solar. You know, there's still some things we need to look into. And then also, hopefully that'll also expand to the courtyard as well. So that's exciting. And then also, not too long ago, we did also submit for another grant through MTC, which is the Metropolitan Transportation Commission, amongst the other agencies in Marin. And we're one of 6 that TAM is recommending for consideration by MTC. And so that's going to the TAM board, I believe tomorrow, or sorry, maybe Wednesday, the 25th. And they'll be having a little dialogue and recommending that those 6 go forward. And ours is one of the 6, and that's Casablanca Complete Streets. So if that gets approved, it would fund the street lighting, which previously had not been included in the design set. So we'll see, fingers crossed.
That's great. Thank you, RJ. And quick follow-up question on that. If for some reason that that grant weren't able to come through, would we still have funding in our budget to include lighting in that project?
Yeah, I mean, it'd be obviously a discussion for council to consider. It would have to come out of our, local Measure F amongst, the other priorities, but certainly an option for council.
Okay, good to know. Thank you. Any other staff reports before we open this up to members of the public? Yeah, Mike, and then Rebecca.
Just a quick update, just to add. I'm sure RJ that slipped his mind, but we have an updated draft of the climate adaptation plan, and it's on the website. We pushed out a notification today and a news flash with frequently asked questions related to that. There's an open comment that is open from the 17th through the end of this month, March 31st. So we encourage our residents to comment and address any additional concerns they have in this newest phase of release of this draft. So that's the one thing I would like to encourage our residents to examine and review and partake in this engagement with the town. And then the second thing I'd like to address is on April 19th, we're having a home key public forum with members of our community work group, as well as staff, Catholic Charities of the county, where we're going to open up a question and answer with the community. And it's our first chance to actually assess how things have progressed since they've opened a month ago, and just to field any questions, comments, concerns again. So again, it's our way with the town, just trying to engage our community and get any questions, answers that our community may have. So those are the 2 updates that I have.
Great, thank you. And Rebecca, did you have your hand up again?
Yes, thank you, Rebecca. And I also wanted to point out a quick update about the vaccination progress in our county. The percent of Marin County population over age 16 that have received at least 1 dose of the vaccine is 47.5%. So out of a population over age 16 of 212,000 approximately, just over 100,000 Marin County residents have received the first dose. And almost 25% have received the full series, which is amazing news, and it's only going to accelerate.
That's incredible. Thank you for sharing that. Any other staff updates before we open this up to members of the public? Yeah, Ashley.
I just wanted to make an announcement, a plug for the online art exhibition that we have. It's going to be closing this Sunday, and it's with the California Watercolor Association. And it's something that we want to really support them because they have chosen to be completely online. We were hoping to have at least 1 week of them being in the community center, but it was too risky when we needed to make that call. But we want them to come back in the future because it's beautiful work and it's mostly local artists, and it's going to be kicking off, the ability to have receptions and galas and people coming back to the community center. So check it out. It ends this week. We'll have a link in the Friday newsletter, and they're beautiful. You can purchase them.
That is awesome. Thank you so much. All right, if there's nothing else, then we are going to go ahead and open this up to members of the public now. So if you have any comments you want to share, questions you want to ask, anything you want to talk about, please go ahead and throw your hand up on Zoom here and we will bring you on the line. First hand up we have right now is from Karen, so we will go to her.
Hello.
Hello.
Spoke to the president of our homeowners association. I live in Meadow Creek Station over on the east side, and she let me know and asked me if I would bring this to this chat. Is that she had written, I think, a question complaint request with regard to street repairs, Creekside Court, Meadow Creek Drive, and Parkview Circle. We had noticed the wonderful work that was done on Coke Road, and she wanted to have repairs on those streets. There's potholes and asphalt breakdown, degradement, what have you. So do you have any idea, are we on any schedule at all to get those repaired, or what's happening?
Thank you. That sounds like an RJ question.
Yeah, so Coke Road was done as part of our preventive maintenance project last year. And then the upcoming one is more of a road rehab, and that's Marina Village, Madera del Presidio, and a couple others, Flying Cloud and Pacific Queen. So it's not currently on that schedule, but I can take a close look at it. We do run annual, or not, probably biannual reports on our overall town-wide network. And so I can look into perhaps why it may or may not have, floated to the surface, but happy to get back to you on that.
Okay, so, and when you're saying Madera del Presidio, you're talking about that main actual Madera del Presidio that runs from Paradise into the community.
Correct.
Okay, and then the second question that I have is kind of related to that, is I have an email in my files from, I think, 2006, where I had an exchange with David Montero. Do any of you even know who that is?
I was in middle school at the time, so I'll just say that.
They didn't teach you this history in middle school? What? Oh no, actually it wasn't 2006, it was 2005, even earlier. Anyway, at that time, he said that the curbs are painted on alternating years on east side and west side. So the curbs that are now profoundly pinkish, and I don't, and he thought that they did it every year. They painted one side or the other. And I don't think they paint every year anywhere. But my question is there a protocol with regard to painting the red curbs on the municipal streets?
Yeah, we, so definitely as part of our, anytime we have a project, we would look at the condition of the red curb. That would be one instance we would refresh them. If there's a specific complaint or issue, we'll come take a look at and see if it's needed. Also, one of the big ones is if people aren't following it and there's an enforcement issue, we would refresh it. But I guess that would be one question for you and others is, are people not seeing the red curb and that it's not actually
well, actually my favorite is when they park right under a no parking sign. So that's just, I think, illiteracy at that point, but
yeah. And so is that same area you're referring to, or is this a different part?
Yeah, and that's just my comment. That wasn't from the president of our HOA. And so whatever protocol there'd been 15 years ago about doing alternating sides of the town, there's no protocol like that.
No, our focus is it functional? Is it doing what it's supposed to do? And then secondly, if we happen to be there and it's geographically convenient to projects, then we'll pick it up then as well. But
okay, all right.
But definitely let us know if it's not working as it's supposed to, and then separately we'll take a look at it from a different lens.
Okay, and then I have a question, I think, of Rebecca, is are we going to look to some of the candidates that applied for the town council position to recruit for open positions on our committees. I'm on the sales tax citizens override committee, and I think we're down one, maybe two
Yeah,
member.
unfortunately, you're down 2 at this point. And yes, definitely, when we open the recruitment period, which I'm thinking will open this Friday, we delayed it 2 or 3 weeks because this vacancy to work on promoting the town council vacancy and doing that interview process first. But I do have plans to open that either this week or early next week and get that 1 month recruitment period started. And first on my list is to send all of them an email letting them know about the opportunity. And I did already tell them to expect to hear from me about it. I thanked them for applying.
Okay. And so RJ, I should expect to hear back from you about the first question that I had on the.
Yeah, if you don't mind, just shoot me an email. That way I don't know that
You'll have something to track.
I
Okay.
have your email somewhere in my inbox, but if you don't mind, send me an email, just rsukko@tcmmail.org.
Say that again.
So R and then my last name at tcmmail.org.
Okay, great. Thanks.
Great, thank you, Karen. We do not have any other hands up right now, guys. It's not a big group. There's like 13 of us on the line. But, oh, great. Okay, now here come a bunch. Awesome. So we're going to go to Phyllis next and then Cheryl.
Hi. Wait a minute. Let me get that out of your face. There you are. I just had a quick question for Mike. And it was just logistics. I wanted to know when the home key, did you call it a forum, Mike? When that's actually going to be?
Yeah, it's April. It's scheduled for April 17th at 6. I believe it's 6 or 6:30. It's going to be in our. It was in our newsletter last week. It'll be in again every week now until the actual community forum. But it's a community engagement forum with members of our working group, which we've designated for local residents, including our recently appointed Leela Mongan, a council member. Fred Casisa is on that as well, another council member. We have Catholic Charities Vice President who will be participating in answering questions regarding the Home Key site. I'm not sure if our town manager will be present, but I have a list of panelists that'll be there, but it'll be open. Rebecca's raising her hand. Go ahead, Rebecca.
It's Monday the 19th.
Did I 19th. Did I say the 17th?
Yeah.
I'm sorry. So it is Monday the 19th, and the time is, I believe it's 6 o'clock.
So it sounded like this was something that those of us who are general public could be a part of, could listen to or watch or whatever?
Absolutely. So it's basically, we're going to give an overview of the information that we've had, some of the, and provide as much information to date as we've gathered, and open it up to the community for questions and answers. So I hope that you'll be there and you'll be prepared to ask some questions specific to the site or any intriguing questions you may have about the project and the progress so far.
Will this be a Zoom meeting also?
It is. It's set up just like this, and I can email you directly the link if you'd like, following this meeting if you'd like.
Okay.
Yeah. If I can just add, I think really this was part of our attempt to really continue the community engagement process that, as we know, was a little truncated in the fall, but we committed through this working group and through really our residents who have taken a tremendous amount of leadership, and as well as Fred Casisa, a town council member, to really continue the conversation with our community, be there to listen to any concerns or issues that may have cropped up, and also just hear what people think. And we have, as part of the working group, we have direct access, as Mike mentioned, Catholic Charities, who's operating the site, will be on the call. And we have, the county, members of the county as well. Myself will be there. So that's really what this is about, is continuing that engagement and conversation with our community, who obviously we had a lot of interest in back in the fall when this was going through the sort of the decision-making phase at the county level, and we were holding discussions locally. So I'll just add that to the context for the meeting.
Okay, thank you very much.
Great, thank you, Phyllis. And quick follow-up question for you guys. Are we planning any direct outreach to the kind of home key direct neighbors in the run-up to that forum?
Well, we hadn't planned on sending out a notice via mail, but we have a registered home key email participant list, and it was really the group of surrounding neighbors that were, like most of us, were caught off guard on what initially when this transpired. So they receive messaging weekly when we have a home key update, and we update our webpage. So we're going to, like I said, we're going to continue to put the message out here every week until that forum, and we'll continue to use all the resources we have to get that message across. And we'll rely on some of our residents who are on the group today and spread the word. Just one additional factor. We're encouraging any questions you may have, if you think of one ahead of time, to email the working group, and that is homekey@tcmmail.org, and you can send your questions ahead of time if you'd like.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Mike. We're going to go to Cheryl next, and just a reminder for everybody, any questions, go ahead and put your hand up, and we're going to go to Cheryl right now.
Okay, I unmuted. You got me? Okay, good. I was over at Piper Park today, and I have to say, our town park looks so much better. And I want to thank, I guess, Public Works and probably the rec department. It really speaks well of our town, I think, to have the lawns are just much better. And I think if I were playing something over at soccer or something over in Larkspur, I'd be afraid of tripping up. But hats off to you guys for that maintenance. My questions concern the objective design and development standards. I have to admit, I have not looked at the document because I think is it over 200 pages? And I'm wondering if I'd like some advice on how to get to the central issues or highlights besides having to read that whole thing. And if you have any suggestions, maybe there are presentations in the Planning Commission website. And I have a second question about that, but Adam, if you want to answer that first.
Sure. So again, probably the best place to start is to look at our website. We have an objective design and development standard webpage that we've been putting up all of our presentations, notices, and sort of, I think the recordings of the meetings, I believe, are also on there as well. So we've been holding public technical advisory working group meetings with a relatively small group of experts, and those are available on the website. It is a big document, but I think what's most important is why we're doing it. And those are in some of the presentations, but really briefly, the reason why we're going through and looking at objective design and development standards, those are for multifamily housing projects. And basically we've decided after discussions with both the working group and the Planning Commission that the first phase of implementing these standards would be in response to really state legislation that requires the town to only look at objective design and development standards if a private developer sort of applies under the regulations in state law that allow them to do so. And so fortunately, we're the big one, SB 35, we're not actually subject to that. So we're not under immediate pressure from that, but there are some others and some in the works this year again that are there to really make us only apply these objective standards to multifamily housing development if they comply with sort of the base zoning and things in our current zoning ordinance. And so currently we don't have those. We don't have anything besides sort of a height limit and a density number. And so that's why we're doing these. And essentially it is, I'm happy to talk to you about the document where we haven't implemented anything. That's the next phase. And so there will be a lot of public discussion about that. Our next meeting actually on this very subject will be April 27th at the Planning Commission. We will be having a workshop joint with the Technical Advisory Working Group and the Planning Commission to talk specifically about implementing these standards, again, in response to the state legislation, but we have to go through essentially a mapping exercise and put basically these potential structures or the sort of the standards and guidelines into locations in Corte Madera. And so we hope a lot of people, if you're interested in this sort of issue, please attend. We're hoping one of the reasons why we're joining it with the Technical Advisory Group and the Planning Commission is because we want to get as many people as possible to this meeting from the public. We will have our consultants, Opticos, which is a design firm that Corte Madera, as well as 10 other Marin County jurisdictions or 9 other Marin County jurisdictions are using to basically come up with this toolkit. And the next step is really figuring out how we're going to customize that toolkit to Corte Madera. So what you're looking at now is the full toolkit, Cheryl, and it's massive. And so one of the things that we'll be doing is stripping out stuff that maybe we don't need or we think is extraneous and sort of trying to make it more digestible, which I can understand. It is a fairly dense document, but there's a lot of really good quality work in there and things that I think we can use to ensure that if multifamily housing gets built pursuant to the state legislation, that it conforms to things that we feel work for our community, and that's really the goal.
And Adam, these standards would apply to multifamily projects. So wherever we have the single family zoning now, it's not going to impact.
That is correct. And the one caveat I will say is there is state legislation this year in the works. It's called SB 9, which is one of it basically as it's currently written. And there's, as we know, every year there's a long ways to go through the process, but it would affect single family homes and zoning districts. And it basically would allow for duplexes on single family home in single family districts and allow for lot splits as well. And that would all be without discretion at the local level. So there wouldn't be any local review of that. And again, if that were to go through, that's one of the reasons why we may want to look at some of these objective standards, because at least we would have the ability to put in place some of those objective standards for what those duplexes and some of the lot splits might look like in their form that they would take. So, but right now that's correct. But we're always on the watch for new housing legislation out of the state, because they do have significant effects on our local ability to control development. And so in any case, that's where we are right now, and can go into more detail. Happy to talk to you, Cheryl, anytime. And I'm glad, thank you for your interest in this, because it is glad to see you're looking at that.
Yeah, I would like to follow up with you, Adam, and I'll
Sure.
get in touch at some point. I think that's all on my plate.
Great. Thank you, Cheryl. Great questions. And thank you, Adam, for that explanation. That's certainly a complex one. So thank you for taking that on. We're going to go to Pat next, followed by Becky, and then Phyllis.
Okay, here I am. Thank you, Eli. I have just two things. One is I want to confirm, Cheryl mentioned our beautiful parks, and it's so true. I just want to confirm that the ordinance that was passed some years ago, I think 10 to 15 years ago, that we only use integrated pest management in our parks and that we do not use chemical pesticides or chemical fertilizers, but use organic materials. Can you just confirm that that's still going on? And then I have one other thing after that.
Happy to speak to that. So yeah, we don't use any pesticides, and we actually we're required to report that as part of our MPDS permit that we work with Marin County Mixed Stop. There were a couple times where we were using, I mean, over the course of a year, like one small jug of a small thing for the hanging baskets, but I don't know that we actually have been in the more recent years. So
thank you.
Very small in volume.
I was just seeing all those just hundreds of little kids out playing on the field today, and I'm sure a lot of their parents, if they knew it, would be very grateful to Corte Madera for that. So thank you for that. The other thing I wanted to mention, and Eli, this is what I had mentioned to you. I've been part of this International Design Science Symposium for the last few days, where they selected just like 100 of 1,000 entries of people who are doing projects to deal with climate change, and some of them specifically in communities where there's sea level rise and also sinking mud, kind of what we have over on the bay side. And they are talking about creating a new level of floating community. If you look at Sausalito and the Green Bay Boardwalk and other places like that, that's an example of mid-20th century floating homes. And they're doing all this design work to come up with how to create floating communities for the new century, for this century. And I'm just wondering, Eli, Mayor Beckman, are you guys open to talking to these people? Can I forward your email address and see what they can possibly I mean, I think they're working pro bono, they're just really elite scientists trying to solve problems. So I don't know how practical, but it definitely would be an interesting exploration, especially since so many didn't want the big wall, right? They don't want to try to keep the ocean out. And what Buckminster Fuller always said was, don't fight nature, don't work against nature, learn to work with nature. And that's what a floating community or some kind of boardwalk community could do. Anyway, what do you think?
I mean, I don't know that I can speak for the town on this one, but I can say that, as just somebody who lives here, I'm certainly very intrigued and would love to learn more. So yeah, please go ahead and share my contact with anybody. It's certainly a very forward-thinking, thing to bring up, right? It is sort of floating homes in the context of, what is living on or near the water going to look like in the next, 50 to 100 years. So I think, kudos to you and this group for kind of tackling that. I can't even begin to fathom what the planning and sort of like regulation involved in that is. I don't know, Adam, if you have any idea, even like I thought that you can't really do houseboats anymore. I could be wrong, but I guess
right. So they would be doing the whole point is to show that humans can sustainably live on the water. So their whole experiment is how to do net zero, no pollution. That's their goal, is all about the ultimate sustainable kind of design. So they definitely be on the edge there. But yeah, Adam, bring us back down to earth.
That's what I'm good for right now.
Yes, you are.
No, I actually, I have no idea of I'd be interested to see some top scientists talk about the regulatory hurdles and spaghetti that they'd have to actually look into. So maybe they need a political scientist as well as sort of the earth scientist to figure that one out.
That's great. That's great.
But,
well, I was thinking it would be
nonetheless,
just for yeah.
Well, go ahead. Of course,
at the very least, just for the homes that are there on the waterfront, maybe they should be allowed to build out on the water, to build their arcs I don't know. I just think there's some creative solutions coming, and I hope that our town is open to them. So far, we have been excellent in that regard. I think we are being very progressive to have a climate adaptation plan, to have taken that initiative. And I love some of the things we're doing. Just wanted to open your minds to that. And yes, Eli, you'll get an email, I'm sure.
Excellent. Thank you, Pat. Appreciate it.
All right, guys. Thank you so much, everybody. Take
Thank
care.
you. We're going to go to Becky next, followed by Phyllis.
Hi. Yes, Ruben, this is probably for you. But you all saw it, I'm sure, in the IJ today. They talked about how Google did an wildfire evacuation simulation with Mill Valley. And it seems to me that Twin Cities is kind of like a little mini Mill Valley. I am with the NRG program, but their two takeaways, it seemed, were to get everybody to go in one car and to open up the streets to having all traffic going in both lanes going out, which requires trailer signs and stuff. So I'm sure that Ruben, you're, far ahead of the IJ on this. What's the plan for not just the NRG block captains, but the whole Twin Cities to getting that information out and, being prepared?
Sure. So, and I'm not sure if you read this article about a month ago or so, or maybe even 2 months ago, in collaboration with the Marin Wildfire Prevention Authority. They signed a contract with a company called Safe Haven, which is actually going to be doing an evacuation study of the entire county, and to maybe look at what are some choke points within the county and what are some strategic things that we can do to try to continue the flow of traffic, basically getting it from the area of danger to area where it's safer. And so part of that, from what I hear from Mark Brown, the MWP director, it should be launching sometime May 1st is when it should be coming out. They're doing the evaluation now, and they're looking at both Google, they're looking at Waze, they're looking at our Marin maps, and then plus the existing evacuation maps that each fire department has created. So they're going to kind of combine all those and then put something out to the public. Last year, both during the glass fire up in Sonoma County and through the lightning siege complex down in Santa Clara. So San Mateo and Santa Clara counties already use Safe Haven, to where they will provide information for you as a resident to figure out if your community has been evacuated, if your community is under an evacuation warning, and what routes of travel are the best ones for you. So I would basically stay tuned, and something should be out here by the beginning of May.
Okay, thank you. That's all.
Great. Thank you, Becky. Thank you, Ruben. We're going to go to Phyllis next.
Unmute. Hi. Mine was for Adam, and when you were talking about the multi-story, multifamily housing, et cetera, is the theater property under consideration for something like that also?
So the theater property is currently in our general plan. It does allow for mixed use development, which would include multifamily housing. There aren't any current plans for that, but theoretically, if there was a private developer who wanted to take advantage of state legislation, let's say it was SB 35 in the future or one of these other pieces of legislation, then theoretically a proposal for multifamily housing could be put forth at that site. And the only local discretion we would have would be through basically the objective standards and design standards that we would be adopting for that project. So I will say, that is an obvious, I think that is type of use is perfectly, we discussed that when we did the Tamil Vista Boulevard rezoning, and mixed use and multifamily housing is certainly a fit there. But again, it comes down to everyone wants to know what specifically it will look like and how it's integrated into the street and so on. And we do have some requirements for street frontage there and so on. So, but yes, that is a potential site. No plans in the works right now, as far as I know. It's the owners of the property are sort of looking for potential new uses there, but have not selected or made any deals with any potential developers. So we haven't heard anything in the planning department about what potentially happens there.
Okay, thank you. Since I hadn't heard anything for a while about what was going on with the property, I'm one of the people who really miss having the movie theater in a town. But when we were talking about multifamily housing, and I know the state's coming down on towns and hard, actually.
Yeah.
And we don't have buildable space unless we do something like the floating homes that Pat was bringing up. It gets difficult.
Yeah, and Phyllis, that's a good point. I mean, one of the things we'll be doing this summer and into the fall is actually somewhat in response to legislation, but every 8 years we do take another look at our housing policies, and sort of we have to select and look at where housing would work in Corte Madera or could work and how to facilitate it. And so these objective standards that we're looking at also could be very useful in that conversation about, well, because I think the community, many members of the public want to know, well, if we say multifamily housing could work here, what in fact does it look like, or can we control the form and the shape of it? And so this toolkit that Cheryl was talking about can be a very useful tool, because we can actually get at that question for particular sites to a large extent. So I do think that's an obvious site, just because it's not being used right now and there's no use there, that we should look at it as a potential opportunity site when we start talking about meeting the state mandates for housing and planning for the number of units which we're going to have to plan for, which I think, if you don't know, it's a order of magnitude much higher than we've seen, I think, in the last several decades, or if not ever. So that will be a discussion we'll have. So thanks for the question.
The other thing that I don't hear anyone talking about in light of this housing, though, Adam, is water.
It actually, and I could get the date. I know MMWD was actually having some public meetings on this actually this spring. It escapes me. I don't have the exact time or date, but I will find out. And there is some discussion about this very topic, about how MMWD needs to plan for water resources going forward and so on. So that is certainly part of the discussion, but that's obviously the forum for that discussion is really with MMWD for the most part. But I will look into it further, and if I find out what specifically that discussion was about, and if it hasn't happened yet, I'll let you know.
Okay, it's just that when mandates come down from the state, that never seems to be part of their consideration. It's mandated, like, you will have the infrastructure, you will have the resources, you will have the schools, you will have the roads, et cetera, et cetera. And now that we are kind of in a drought situation, there's no mention of it. And so it's a concern. So I'm glad I was able to bring it up with you and hear you say, yes, that's in our consideration too. It's just so hard to have something jammed down your throat, even though, yeah, anyway.
Got it. Well, thank you, Phyllis. Good points. Was there anything else you wanted to talk about?
Not today. I see RJ's already gone. I was going to say thank you again for the poppies. Haven't they been beautiful? You're over on this side.
Yes,
You
yes,
very
and,
beautiful.
and we will certainly pass along your gratitude there.
Thanks.
Thank you very much. All right, we're gonna bring Cheryl back on here.
Yeah, I just want to maybe put a bug in your ear, in everyone's ear, about multifamily housing and some of these mandates. I know they're not looked on very favorably generally, but when we say we're built out, I think that sort of doesn't represent the reality, because a couple of weeks ago, I think the Weekly Chronicle had a link to maps that, or maybe it was in the Planning Commission material staff report, where it showed where permits had been given for homeowners to put a second story. And it was quite a few instances. And that's to allow a single family. Well, I don't see why a second story can be added and allow a second unit for a second family. So we're not really built out. We with a little imagination, and of course we'd want to have things accommodate the context and be a human scale. But and I live right on Tamil Vista, which is a pretty busy street, and I think along Tamil Vista and along Tamalpais Drive, we also have single family homes. Those would be prime situations in my mind for duplexes or that kind of situation, because I think it impacts the neighborhood less, because we already have a lot of traffic. We already have commercial buildings on one side of the street. So there are really opportunities here in Corte Madera, and I hope we look with some imagination for those.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, Cheryl, and I certainly agree with that, and I think the mention of sort of the theater site on Tamil Vista Boulevard is a good example of that. It's not being used right now. It's vacant. We should be open to new uses there, and housing opportunities are certainly something that would be well utilized in our community at that location. And there's others, and it's sort of unfortunate, because I think we could have a really solid conversation about where new uses and opportunities should be in Corte Madera. And as we've done, and Cheryl, there are ADUs, for example. We've done a lot of policy work on accessory dwelling units, and those are allowed. They're not technically duplexes, but single family homes can build those in their backyards and whatnot, or inside their own homes. But having that conversation, there's always this backdrop, and I think you're right, of sort of these state mandates that sort of which catch people's attention, and it almost provides somewhat of an excuse from having a real conversation amongst ourselves about, what do we want in terms of multifamily housing or more housing opportunities. We should still have that conversation. And as you mentioned, there are several sites that I know myself and Martha have started to think about with, and we'll have public conversations about those. And I would love to have just a conversation on that level for what is our community, where do we think new housing opportunities could be located in Corte Madera, and then after that start talking about sort of the numbers and the arena and all that stuff. So we'll see how it goes. I mean, it's hard not to have the conversation at the same time, because the fact is that that's what we're going to have to be planning for. But I appreciate that sentiment, and certainly staff will walk that sort of, it is a balance, I think, in a lot of ways of doing our due diligence and looking for creative solutions where housing could be added, and then also understanding the concerns that people have about sort of the state mandates and requirements that were sort of taking away local control in that regard.
Yeah. Well, I can talk more about this, but
sounds like we should do lunch when we're able to, when we're all vaccinated.
Yeah. Well, I am, but I'll wait for you, Adam. Okay, thank you.
Great. Thank you, Cheryl. We're going to go to Patty next, followed by Corte Madera resident.
Hi, following up Cheryl's mention about are we really built out? I go back to years ago when Marin County was considering the concept of the housing and activity center for older residents. And we were looking for spaces. One of them was the theater property. And if you look at NoHo, the senior artist colony in North Hollywood, it's such a great example of wonderful use of property to have the activities and opportunities on the bottom floor and then housing on a higher level. And I think everybody freaked out about the density, the D word, and it got no traction at all in Marin because of that. But you know, check it out. That North Hollywood Senior Art Colony is just a wonderful example of how to make a lot of people happy. So that's my thought. And yes, I'll join you for lunch, Adam, when you and Cheryl have that conversation.
Very cool. Thank you, Patty. And we will definitely check that out. We're going to go to Corte Madera resident next.
Hi, everybody. Thank you again for today's meeting. I'm on the east side of Corte Madera, and I'm just putting together some things about ADU. I have a disabled child who's actually an adult now, and I would like to do an ADU for him, but I'm one of those people who has no property in the back and buku property in the front. Is that ever going to be an option? You just said it's out of kind of our control now, but do we ever see that being an option? I don't want to go up because we might be elegantly retreating. I want to figure out if I can do an ADU in the front yard, not necessarily attached to the house, for him, and all ADA compliant and whatnot.
Yeah, I'll let Adam speak to that.
Sorry, I was having some technical difficulties there. Yeah, I think the best thing to do would be to reach out to myself or Martha Battaglia, who is really our ADU expert on the planning staff. She's a senior planner. Why don't
I'm just wondering too, do we do anything special considering this is involving somebody with a disability, severe disabilities? Do any towns do that, or?
Yeah, yes, there is actually, and we have an ordinance in our zoning ordinance that's called, I think it's called reasonable accommodation. It's an ordinance we passed several years ago that allows for some relief for those sorts of maybe needs for somebody with disabilities, and it defines that fairly broadly. So that's all something we can have a discussion about, I'm sure. If I can, what's the best way to give you the contact? You're welcome to reach it. I'll give you my email, and then maybe I'll just include.
I've got your email. Okay.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah. And then I'm sorry, I have one other question. 153 YOLO Street. It's not on the MLS anymore. It's got that lovely green fencing around it, but we're pretty much on year 2 now of, it's red tagged. I don't know if it's ringing any bells. They did all kinds of work without permits. And I'm just trying to figure out if that house is, and maybe Mike would know what's going on there.
Yeah, we're talking about 153 YOLO?
Yeah.
Yeah, I spoke with one of your neighbors today on this as well. So they are actively working to try to get a building permit.
Awesome.
Yeah, but we've been working with them for months. It's just a very tedious process because they're in the floodplain and they started work without a permit, and it's a very complicated situation. But we're actively working with them and doing what we can to help them. But unfortunately, at this point, they're going to have to lift their house and pretty much put a stop to what their initial plans were, unless they reappraise their home and it comes up to a higher value. So right now there's a catch up with the floodplain administrator and the actual valuation with their intended construction project. So they've actually been very patient with us, and we're working with them as well. And I know that the neighborhood is unfortunately being burdened by this unfortunate site. And I send emails and I'm trying to triage this and make this as painless as possible under the very unfortunate circumstances. But we are trying to get this through, but right now the next step is waiting for an appraisal. And I spoke with the owner representative this week, and unfortunately they're booked now as well. So they're motivated. They're not abandoning it. They told me they're spending over $7,000 a month to pay a mortgage for that property that just sits vacant until they can actually gain access to do the work. So
that's great. It's great to hear that it's not abandoned.
No, it's not abandoned, and I feel their pain. I feel everyone's pain that has to see it, and I drive by it, and we're just, you know, we talk about this weekly in our department head meeting about how we can, you know, what we can do to keep this moving along as fast as possible. But right now it's in their court, and we have submitted their initial plans that don't include a lift to our third-party plan checkers for review to just get the process moving as quickly as possible. This is one of the ones that's been in limbo for over a year, and you know, I am constantly watching it and communicating with the property owners and our building department to try to keep the things moving along, you know, as quickly as possible.
Okay, great. I appreciate that. We just were worried it was abandoned, but to hear you say all this, that's great. And I'll put the word out. I'm the chatterbug in the neighborhood.
Okay, well, I spoke to another chatterbug this morning, and I provided them with the same update. So thank you, and please know that we are doing everything we can to try to move this along.
Great, thank you.
Our pleasure.
Great, thank you very much. And we've got like a minute and a half left here. No other hands up, so we'll just do a last call if anybody else has one last quick question or anything they want to bring up. And I'm not seeing any hands go up, so I think we can go ahead and, oh, we got one last hand coming up from Dorsey, and she has not had a chance yet to speak, so I'm going to bring Dorsey on here.
Okay. Can you hear me? Okay.
Yes.
I know you're limited on time, and unfortunately I didn't come in until quite late, and I have not been participating for some time. I'm curious as to whether we have given or will give David Kuhnhart the recognition he deserves. He's done a tremendous amount, not only for Corte Madera, but for the county in terms of climate control, etc. Can you tell me?
Yeah, absolutely.
Hopefully the second meeting in April.
Oh, go ahead, Rebecca, go ahead.
That's just what I'm hoping for, is the second meeting in April. I don't know if we will have everything together by the first meeting in April, but I think he might be out of town. But second meeting of April before he leaves town is my goal.
So something's anticipated for April? Is that what you said?
Yes, you will see an announcement about it as soon as it is planned and scheduled.
Terrific. Thank you so much. Ciao,
Great.
ciao.
Thank you, Dorsey. All right, guys. Well, it is 5 o'clock here, so we're going to go ahead and wrap up. I want to thank all the members of the public who joined us and asked great questions, and all of our fantastic staff who spent this time with us and answered questions and gave us updates. So thank you guys all so much for your work, and we will see you guys. I think our next public meeting that I'm aware of is the town council meeting on April 6th. And so we'll see you guys then, if not sooner. Alrighty, take care, everyone.